Why do so many Filipino families seem incredibly close, but completely fall apart after mom or dad dies? You'd think that inheritance is what destroys the family, but I don't think it's the money. I think the money simply reveals wounds that have been there for decades. And once you see it, you'll start noticing it everywhere. I'm Joel, and welcome to the Philosophy Edge, where we explore the deeper ideas behind the stories that shape our lives. Today, I want to explore one of the hidden costs of Filipino immigration, not the financial cost, not the physical distance, the emotional debt that sometimes get passed from one generation to the next. When people think about Filipino immigration, they usually think about sacrifice. A mother leaves, a father leaves, a son, a daughter. Someone leaves home so everyone else can have a better life. Therefore, we assume the hardest part is the separation. But according to the book, A Good Provider is One Who Leaves by Jason DeParle, the separation is only the beginning. The book follows a Filipino family over decades. A daughter leaves the Philippines, works in the Middle East, and later immigrates to the United States as a nurse. She sends money home, supports relatives, and creates opportunities that wouldn't have existed otherwise. It's an inspiring story. But it's also heartbreaking because every opportunity came with a cost. Children grew up without parents. Marriages were tested. Birthdays were missed. Relationships slowly changed. Everyone sacrificed, just in different ways. Now, here's the interesting part. You would expect that after years of sacrifice, once the family becomes financially stable, everything would finally be okay. But that's often not what happens. Spend enough time reading stories from Filipino Americans online, you'll notice the same pattern repeating itself. One woman described how her grandmother passed away. The funeral hadn't even settled, but her mother and her aunts and uncles began fighting over land and inheritance. The conflict became so severe that her mother refused to return to the Philippines. She hasn't been back in years. When her own daughter wanted to visit relatives, she broke down crying, terrified that somehow her family would take her daughter away. Another family hasn't spoken in decades because of disagreements over money sent back home. Others describe siblings who haven't spoken since their parents died. On the surface, they're arguing over land, but I don't think they're really arguing about land at all. Now, I want to be clear. I'm not saying this is unique to Filipino families. Every culture has inheritance disputes. Every culture has siblings who stop speaking. Every culture has parents who unintentionally leave emotional wounds behind, but immigration gives these conflicts a unique shape. When one child is chosen to leave, that child often carries everyone's hopes, everyone's expectations, everyone's financial future. That's an impossible burden. The child who leaves wonders, did I do enough? The child who stays wonders, why wasn't I enough? Both can carry pain. Both can carry resentment. And both can believe their sacrifice was greater. But here's the philosophical question I can't stop thinking about. What is the purpose of sacrifice? Is sacrifice meant to prove who suffered the most? Or is sacrifice supposed to make life better for the people who come after us? Because if it's a second, then maybe we've been asking the wrong questions all along. Instead of asking, what do I deserve? Maybe we should ask, what kind of family do I want my children to inherit? Not what house, not what land, not what bank account. What kind of family? Ancient Greek philosopher Aristotle believed that character isn't built by what we believe. It's built by what we repeatedly choose to do. Every family argument, every act of forgiveness, every difficult conversation, every moment we decide to listen instead of win is shaping the character of the next generation. Children are always watching. They don't just inherit our DNA. They inherit our habits. They inherit our stories. They inherit the way we treat each other. And one day, they'll decide whether to pass those habits on. That means every generation has a choice. We can inherit resentment or we can inherit wisdom. We can keep score or we can seek understanding. That doesn't mean ignoring injustice. It doesn't mean pretending everything was fair. Sometimes people really were treated differently. Sometimes there were real betrayals, real favoritism, real pain. Those things need to be acknowledged honestly. But honesty should lead us towards healing, not towards becoming prisoners of the past. Real reflection requires something difficult. The courage to ask ourselves, am I protecting my family? Or am I protecting my pride? Those are not always the same thing. Sometimes the greatest act of strength isn't winning the argument. Sometimes it's ending it. Not because you were wrong, but because your children deserve a better story than the one you inherited. Maybe that's the real legacy. Not how much we leave behind, but how much peace. Because money can be inherited, land can be inherited, trauma can be inherited, but wisdom must be practiced. And healing is a choice that every generation has to make for itself. If this conversation resonates with you, I'd love to hear your family story in the comments. Not to judge anyone, but to learn from another. These conversations are easy, but maybe they're exactly the conversations we should be having. If you enjoy exploring the deeper philosophy behind culture, history, and everyday life, subscribe to The Philosophy Edge. Until next time, keep asking not just what happened, but why. And maybe even more importantly, ask what happens next.
If you'd want more content like this, hit like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more.